Titles are everything on YouTube. A snappy eye-catching title combined with a decent thumbnail can be the biggest reason for someone clicking on a video. It's why stuff like clickbait is so prevalent and also so despised. But I want to tell you that my title is true from a certain point of view, because Blitz Bowl is probably one of the greatest games I've ever played, and I think many of you on the fence with Blood Bowl would probably agree too. It's just the fact that this game is rarer than a salt-based steak, and the likelihood of you being bothered or able to pick this up is slimmer than Christian Bale in The Machinist, because the only distributor of this game is Barnes & Noble in the US and parts of Germany. Now, since my Sprechen Sie Deutsch is as basic as a D in GCSE, and whatever I picked up in our feeders aim pet, I'm willing to bet y'all lot watching this vid are pretty much in the same situation. See, to get hold of this, a yam first had to speak to a brummie on Facebook who told me that you have to join a Yankee distribution service called Stackery. You then buy it from Barnes & Noble using the address the company give you. They ship it to that company, who you then have to pay to ship it to you. You then do a lot of waiting by the door to receive your shipping tax notice that you have to pay Royal Mail for. And then a few days later, your box will arrive with your glorious game inside. In total, leaving you down around about 72 quid. Unless they mess you up with your shipping like they did me, and you get a discount for the stress. But either way, you will probably end up paying more for this little insular box game than you would end up paying for Blood Bowl Season 2 from an online retailer with a bit of discount. All in all, it took 15 days from ordering it for it to get to me, which ain't bad from the Yanks. But I'll be the first to admit the whole ordeal is a slight inconvenience for most people to even want to attempt. But I will be honest in saying that I think more people should, because this game is sensational. Inside the box for that 72 quid, you get 2 teams, the humans and dwarves, which equates to 1 sprue of each from their available box sets. So that of course includes the balls and tokens on the sprue. I already have my human and dwarf teams, so I'll be using these to build up an Old World Alliance team for the main game. You also get the rulebook, which is only 20 pages, so it's quite compact. You get 50 roster pads for campaign play, the gaming board, which is much smaller than the main one, along with dugouts, dice, a new range ruler for throwers, and a boatload of cards. Included in the cards is all the teams GW made just before the release of the ogres. So you get cards in here for the humans, dwarves, dark elves, lizardmen, undead, wood elves, chaos, nurgle, elven union, goblins and halflings, which means you have a decent enough set of options for your games and leagues you will run. So what is this game? What is Blitz Bowl? I'm hoping you're asking right now. Well, Blitz Bowl is a slimmed down half-an-hour version of Blood Bowl. This is basically the Warcry or Kill Team Specialist Games style game for Blood Bowl. It's basically like a 6-a-side version of footy. You have a much smaller pitch and a strict shorter time limit because that's all your subs will pay for. You only have 3 actions per turn, and it's not about scoring touchdowns / goals because you have a river of cards that are constantly ticking down for you to earn points by completing objectives after the first turns of both teams have been completed. The winner is the one who has the most points when all the cards have been claimed or discarded, or you just earn 10 more points than your opponent. The game can also enter a sudden death phase with the special endgame cards. Once these cards are active, you have to play all the way till the end of the card pile, and they give you some decent objectives to earn points fast. The addition of this ticking clock means your turns and actions will always be different, and you don't just play in one specific way like you would with Blood Bowl. Sometimes you might actually want to pass the ball to earn a challenge point. Sometimes you might have to attempt to smack down opposing models as elves instead of just dodging all the time. The fast-paced action, combined with you only getting 3 actions a turn, means gameplay is fast. I've had a few test games now, and none have lasted longer than half an hour. So combined with the size of this game, being able to fit on a coffee table, and the simpleness of the rules, means this is the perfect game for getting your kids or group mates into a variant of Blood Bowl. And if any of your mates are big Speedball 2 fans, just tell them this is basically the best example of it on the tabletop. And that's because the actions are not just a straight conversion of Blood Bowl. You only really have a short list of things you can do. Open players can run, which is basically moving your player's allotted movement allowance. That's displayed on their relevant card, but you can't finish your movement next to an opposing model. Mark, which basically means you can move up to 2 squares to stand next to an opposing mini. And throw, which does exactly what it says. You attempt to throw the ball, you have a stat on the card showing you what you need to roll, and there's a couple of modifiers to that which makes it harder by 1 for you to throw the ball, like long throws and obstructed throws or receivers. There is no catch check, the receiver just catches the ball, and you can also tactically throw the ball into an open square for another to pick up if you have actions left. Once players are classed as marked, you can block, which is near enough the same as Blood Bowl. The only difference being that strength isn't a thing, so your block isn't assisted, you just roll 1 block dice. But if you are assisted, you get to roll 2 block dice. The results of the dice are pretty much the same. A miss score means you fail the roll and do nothing. The model that blocked is also unable to do anything else the rest of the turn. Tackle means the opposing model gets knocked down, but the blocking model now can't do anything else. Shove means you push your opponent back directly from you. You can't pick one of the 3 squares, but you also get to follow up after the block. Smash knocks the target down, and Crunch knocks them down also, but it gives a -1 to the armor roll. In terms of injury rolls, as soon as you knock down an opponent's model, you do an armor roll and have to beat the number on that model's card. If you beat the number, you injure that player and they are then placed into the dugout. There is no way of causing permanent or niggling injuries, and your models also cannot die. The last 2 actions you can do is stand up if your model is prone after getting knocked down but passed an armor roll. And lastly, you have the reserves action, which means you can take a model from the dugout and place them in your end zone. Also, don't worry if your team has took a beating, as you have something called emergency reserves, which means if you have fewer than 3 players on the board whenever it's your turn, you can just pull players from your dugout for free and put them in your end zone. In terms of picking the ball up, all you have to do is move your model over it. There is no check, and also there is no turnovers. Everyone has 3 actions a turn, and you're free to take risky chances, which means you can attempt plays you wouldn't do in regular Blood Bowl, opening the game up for faster, easier gameplay, and with you not having to learn a lot of different actions. So you end up picking this game up super quick. Adding in rules for multiple balls and balls with different abilities as described on other cards. An experience I wouldn't recommend for your first couple of games. You can also include the new Get On With It rule, which means if you or your opponent decide to hog the balls and stall the game, not moving or earning any points, a new ball comes into play, meaning a action can get hectic, and with you gaining 2 bonus points for earning all 3 challenge cards in one turn, it means you don't really want to be messing around. You want to play aggressively and get as many points as fast as you can. To do that, each of the specialist players like blitzers, throwers and catchers for each team have an ability to make bashing, throwing or running after catching the ball 3 actions written on their appropriate cards, and these can easily be forgotten whilst you're in the thrall of a game, like most small extra rules, but it's best to try and remember great ones like moving 2 extra spaces after catching the ball, or always getting 2 dice blocks without assistance. And that's really it for the base game. But where it gets a little bit more interesting is in the campaign aspect of this game. Now, unlike regular Blood Bowl, your players don't progress. In terms of lore, as soon as a player gets decent, they get picked up by an actual Blood Bowl team. So instead, it's you, the coach, who progresses and improves with traits that can assist you over the next few games. You roll both d8s, or 1d16 if you have one, so the stat upgrade you get is always random. And I'll be honest, the buffs ain't that special for me, just looking at them without playing a campaign. But you write them down on your stat sheet, as well as your score, the amount of challenge cards you've claimed, and injuries you've dished out. The campaign, for me, I will be honest, is probably the worst aspect of this game, as it feels like it was more tacked on than the one in Massive Darkness. The game for me just doesn't need it, and it didn't need extra rules you'll most likely forget or not bother using because they aren't all that useful. This game was designed as a half-hour coffee table version of Blood Bowl and was no doubt balanced around just the individual abilities. It works best as fast 1v1 games when you want to get a few games in during 1-2 hour session with your group, or when you decide to run a small league where you play each other without the campaign traits. You just give teams 3 points for a win, 1 for a draw, and nothing for a loss. And you have a laugh for a couple of weeks because of how fast you can get games completed, doing the playoffs and eventual final, or just keeping it as a league like the Prem. However you run it, well, that's up to you. But what you do have here is a sensational, fast and easy to learn game of smaller Blood Bowl where just one team box that you can usually pick up for 20 quid will give you everything you need to play. It's perfect to transition your kids or mates into the main game, but for me, I dare to put this out there and have the audacity to say that it's better than the main game as a base experience. Blood Bowl will always have a superior experience when it comes to building a team in a campaign and playing in a league, but this just works as something you can get on the table quick and start playing. So all I can do is recommend this game and hope that you check it out. Someone has put it on Tabletop Simulator if you want to try it out before considering importing it, and if you are intrigued to import it, I have a link in the description to Stackery which will give you $10 off your first shipment order. I can't state enough how amazing this little gem is. I will of course be bringing games to the channel in future, but until then, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.